Good morning, everybody. How are we doing? This is Jeremiah. We have another webinar for you, and this will be a good one. This is going to be fun. The a very distinguishing feature of Land Effects is the fact that all of our training resources are free and available, and we create so many. It's always a absolute, absolute dictate from my dad and myself. The concept of charging money for training resources just made no sense to either of us. If you can't learn how to use the software, it's useless. And there's we have to try to make a profit off of making the software difficult to learn and then charging for the training resources. Like it was just like, what sort of twisted world is that, so make the software easy to learn and provide every imaginable training resource for it. That's always been our philosophy. But the downside of that is we've got so much that it definitely can be a little overwhelming when you're just starting. Where do you possibly start? So that's what this webinar is intended to be, a fantastic little tip of the spear for all of these amazing training resources. This webinar, of course, is being recorded, as are all of our webinars, which we'll even be showing you, of course. They're all there. They're all on the website for free for you to watch. And so you'll be able to watch this again. If you do have questions while you're watching this, you can. This is live, and there is a Q and A button at the bottom of your screen. Stands for questions and answers. If you want to click that, as I am right now. I'm going to get it situated so that I can see these questions coming in. And then you'll also be able to see the answers that we type to other people's questions. So it makes a great little companion while you're watching this live. It makes it a little easier for you to quickly type in a question to us. I'm sure you'll have some. We got a really full room here with a lot of people. I'm sure you have plenty of questions. Very excited for your journey with Land Effects. And Paul is going to take us away and show everything off.
Thank you, Jer. Good morning, everyone. Training resources are something that just about everyone here at LandFX works on in some manner or another. We strive to provide everything possible for new and veteran LandFX users to become familiar with all of our tools. And if our users come to us for information, we'll often recognize if there's a void and strategize how we can update or existing content or add new content to fill that void. This means that our learning resources are an effort that is created by us and the LandFX user contributions. Sorry. Um, as already stated, my name is Paul, and today I will be talking about these resources that are available right now. Here's the outline for the day. I'm just going to give an overview in the slideshow of our training resources. And then once we wrap that up, I'll jump into CAD and the web browser just to show you some of these different resources that are available. And those available training resources are our documentation pages, knowledge base articles, power tip videos, webinars, the LandFX trainer, as well as personal training. And while personal training is something that we offer for a fee, everything else is free and available right now. So let's get into it. So the documentation is helpful instructional articles on every tool, function, or feature that's included in our software. We painstakingly document every single aspect that we can think of the software, or at least Jason does. Shout out to Jason Hilford, who's our goofy and lovable technical writer who turns our jumbled notes and ideas into organized and readable content. So how can you access LandFX documentation? So if you go to our website, which is landfx.com, there should be a drop-down menu at the top that says support, or at least tomorrow it will say support. Right now it says resources, but we're doing a big website update tomorrow, and that will change to support. But click on that or click on the documentation category underneath support, and it'll take you to our documentation page. Other ways to access LandFX documentation is you can search for topics from our support page, or if you find any search LandFX search bar found on our pages, you'll find these on knowledge base articles, documentation pages, support pages. Go ahead and type in what you're looking for into that search bar, and documentation pages will be part of the results that come up. If you don't have a specific thing that you want to learn about in our documentation, you can browse through our documentation pages. This is on the support page as well. So click on documentation, then click on one of these broader categories. Maybe you want to learn more about the FX admin side of things. So maybe you click on admin, and then you can narrow that down more and more as you go along until you get to a documentation page that is suited to your needs. Another way to access our documentation pages is directly from CAD. So if you hover your mouse over a tool in the ribbon, a LandFX tool that is, a little flyout will pop up that will briefly describe what that tool is or what it does. Maybe even have a little image showing like a diagrammatical view of what that tool does. But while that flyout's open, you can press the F1 key and it'll open up that documentation page for that tool. And just about all of our dialog boxes in LandFX, there's a help button. So if you want to learn more about what that dialog box does and how to use it, click on the help button and it'll open up that documentation page. When you get to a documentation page, this is what it will look like. At the top, there are links, which will take you down to specific parts of the page. These documentation pages tend to be pretty long. So if you're just looking for a very specific part of the page, use the links at the top to jump to that area. Now, if you're new to the subject or you want a broader understanding of what's going on the documentation page, we recommend that you read the entire page and pay attention to the yellow and blue boxes. These are little notes or disclaimers, usually added in after a LandFX user has come back to us and said that the documentation page isn't too clear or that the page needs a little addendum. We add in these little notes, so read those as well. On the page, you may see on the right-hand side power tip videos that relate to the subject. So you can click on those and watch those little videos. And then at the bottom, you'll find related troubleshooting issues or webinars that pertain to that page as well. So lots of links to other resources within that one resource to really help get a full understanding of the subject. The knowledge base is a lot like our documentation, but it pertains to troubleshooting issues. So if you are experiencing any kind of issue or odd behavior in your LandFX work, go for the knowledge base. And why did I include the knowledge base in training resources? Because for me personally, when I troubleshoot my own issues, if I come across something that doesn't make sense and I go and I look it up and I read about it and then I apply the solution to my own drawing or whatever I'm working on really, the information tends to stick. And so next time if I come across this issue, I know what to do to fix it, or I know how I can basically avoid the issue in the future if it's that sort of issue. So how do you access the knowledge base? Once again, you can go to our support page and use the search bar there, or you can search on any of the LandFX search bars on the website, and it'll pull open not only documentation pages, but knowledge base articles if those hit those keywords that you input. Additionally, just like documentation, on the support page, you can browse through our knowledge base by starting with a broad category and then clicking on it and then narrowing it down to your specific issue. The layout is a little different, but it looks mostly the same. Um, but KB articles or knowledge base articles are typically broken up into the issue, cause, and solution. So this is a great way to get a better understanding of what's going on because we describe the issue, which you can then compare with your issue and see if it's the same or similar. And then we'll provide a cause. So we explain what's happening, giving a better understanding. And then we'll wrap it up with a solution or multiple solutions. Here are a couple search tips if you do come across an issue. If you receive an error, uh, right off the bat, you should type that error into the search bar and look for it. If it's a LandFX error, we have a page for it, basically. Um, so look for the error specifically if you get an error. If you don't get an error pop up, look in the command line for any sort of error or indication messages. This will usually highlight what's going on or at least provide an indication as to where you should start looking. If you are using a specific tool and it's not working, include the name of the tool. If you want to sort of filter out documentation pages and just look for troubleshooting pages, include words like issue, problem. And then, of course, describe the issue or behavior. The next training resource are power tips. These are short, roughly 2-minute videos showcasing tools and helpful techniques. Um, most of these relate to LandFX specifically, but sometimes they branch out into different subjects sort of relating to the profession. We've been releasing these for the last 10 years, sometimes almost every week. And you'll want to sign up for the newsletter if you want to get notifications for these videos. We basically send out a weekly newsletter, and if there's a new power tip, that'll be right there in that newsletter, so you don't even have to go to our website. You can just click on your email. And where are these power tips? You can type in landfx.com/power tips into your web browser, and it'll take you to the power tips section of the video page, which looks like this. Once again, you can search from the support pages, just like you would with documentation and knowledge base articles, and power tips will come up as well. Or you can go to the LandFX videos page, which if you go to our homepage and click on the videos dropdown, it'll take you to the videos page where you can search through power tips or browse through the power tips. So maybe you don't have a specific subject in mind, you just want to learn more. Go ahead and browse through there, find one that looks interesting or relates to what you want to learn about, and watch that video. Hopefully you know about this one since you're here or you're watching it recorded. Webinars are another great training resource. These are 1 hour long live presentations covering a variety of topics from LandFX workflows to anything related to the world of landscape architecture. Once again, head over to landfx.com/videos to search or browse through recorded webinars. When you click on a recorded webinar, this is what it looks like. It's got a video that you can press play on. You can adjust the volume, the quality, you can add subtitles, you can make it full screen. But one super helpful aspect to this page is that below the webinar is a full transcript of everything that's covered. And so if you don't have an hour and 12 minutes to spend on this video and you're looking for a specific workflow or a tool being used, go ahead and scroll through this transcript or use the Control F, which is the find tool, where you can enter in a word and it'll filter out those words down below, helping you find that specific subject. And next to the subject in the transcript, there is a timestamp. So you can then go to that specific time in the video and just watch that section. The next training resource, and kind of the basis for this webinar, is the Land Effects Trainer. With this, you can learn how to use Land Effects tools right from CAD. To access the Land Effects Trainer, open up CAD, type Land Effects into the command line and press enter, or you can go to the help drop down in any of the FX ribbon tabs and click on the trainer button. This web dialog will pop up, and you have currently 3 sections to choose from. You got irrigation, planting, and details. Soon we should have some CAD training lessons. Those are in the works. And each of these sections has roughly 30 lessons via short videos to get you familiarized with the essential tools for each section. When you watch these trainer videos or the lessons, a lot of times, if there's an actionable item, it'll end with a little assignment. So this little superhero guy will pop up and give you a little task that you can then perform yourself. And if you do it and you click verify, you'll get a little thumbs up saying, good job, you did it correctly. If you don't do it correctly, he will say you should try again. And so maybe you should rewatch the video and follow the guidance. Once you do complete one of these lessons, it'll be crossed out in the menu on the left there, indicating that you've already done that lesson, and then move you on to the next video. You can always go back and revisit any of these lessons, even if it's crossed out, but this is a good way of keeping track of what you've done. So maybe if you want to take a break, come back the next day and learn, 5 more lessons, you can do that, and it's easy to tell. If you don't have access to CAD for whatever reason and you want to watch these trainer videos, you can do so. Go to our support page or any of our support pages, and in that search bar, search for trainer or Land Effects Trainer. And you'll find a page for the train. Oh. Search for the trainer and pull open that page, and there's a little documentation page that describes what the trainer is, how to use it, and then at the bottom there is a link for the Land Effects Trainer that you can watch outside of CAD. One thing to note on that is that the assignments are only available in CAD, so when the superhero guy pops up and tells you to do the task, nothing will happen when you press verify. And finally, we do offer personal training. This is paid training, and our trainers are typically pretty booked up for a while. So if you do decide to go down this road, be aware that these should be scheduled months in advance. The cost for personal training is $450 for 1 hour, or if you book 2 or more hours, it's $350 per hour. And what it is that you'll communicate with the trainer on what subjects you want to go over. What do you want to learn about? What's giving you trouble? And you and the trainer will come up with a curriculum for the training. And once we have that all dialed in, we'll set up a live webinar for you, and anyone in your office can join and watch as well. And we'll go through it. So we'll follow the curriculum, but because it's live, that means that you can ask questions at any time. You can make comments, which means that the training session, and sometimes it does this, can veer off course, and go down different routes. But we're open to it. That's part of the glorious thing about having live training sessions is that you can take these detours and you don't have to stick to a specific schedule. So that's it for the slideshow for now. So let's go into CAD and show off the LandFX trainer. So here I have just opened up FXCAD with LandFX, obviously. And so I'm staring at a blank page. Now, when you're starting the LandFX trainer, the way that we designed it is we expect you to kind of start with a blank drawing. So basically starting from square one, let's get familiar with these tools. So what I have here is a blank drawing. If I want to open up the trainer, I can type LandFX into the command line and press enter, or I can go up to the help dropdown and click on the trainer button. And it's going to open up this trainer here. So let's give a little scenario. Maybe I'm an irrigation designer, but I've never used LandFX. So I want to get started with irrigation tools. This is a great place to start. So I'm going to click on irrigation. And I already watched this video, so it is crossed out, but let's imagine that it's not. Basically, there's an order to this, starts with 1, ends with 30 something, depending on the subject. And so you want to start from the top and work your way down. And so let's take a look at what the first video looks like. And the first video for all these modules is an overview of the trainer to help get you familiar with what you're looking at before you start moving on to working with the LandFX tools. So we'll click that, take it to a page. There's a little description down below. And let's watch the video.
Welcome to the LandFX Irrigation Trainer. In this video series, we will provide step-by-step guidance on utilizing the fundamental features found in the Effects Irrigation tab, located along the ribbon menu. All of the essential irrigation tools are conveniently housed in this section. This trainer series aims to familiarize you with most of our irrigation tools, how to access them, and their associated verbiage, all while demonstrating the proper use of the tools. Watch the video associated with the current lesson as many times as you feel necessary to learn the concepts. Once you feel that you understand the lesson, try it for yourself in CAD. After doing this, come back to the trainer to verify that you have completed that section. You will be automatically progressed to the next lesson and video. Now enough chatting, let's start learning.
All right, so that was the trainer overview. And notice that it was already crossed out, but it would cross out if it wasn't, and it moved me on to the next lesson. So this lesson, which is kind of, step 1 when working in LandFX, create a new project. So let's go through this one, and then we'll actually do the task that it tells us to do at the end. And one thing I should note is that you do have some controls here. If the video is too small, you can full screen it, and it'll expand the video to the size of this window. You can grab the corner of this window and stretch it out so that if you want to full screen it there, you'll have an even bigger video to watch. If for whatever reason sound isn't working or you need some sort of assistance, you can turn on subtitles. And you can also view a transcript of the script here. So if you're more of a reader or you like to read while the video is going, go ahead and open that up.
It's time to create a new project. LandFX projects are where all of your irrigation equipment and specific irrigation info will be stored. It is important for every design to have a unique LandFX project assigned. In the Effects Admin ribbon, you'll see the Project List button. This is where you can create, access, and organize your projects. click on the New button. Next, give your project a number and name. Make sure that your number is unique for each project. Choose Imperial or Metric under Preference Set depending on the units you work with. Click OK and the Project Manager will pop up confirming this information. Select Irrigation at the bottom of the Project Manager dialog to get started.
Okay, so there's our first lesson. Now, because I resized the screen and I maximized the video, it kind of messed with the little animation afterwards. So if this happens to you, press escape and it should get you right back on track. Basically, you need to just escape out of the full screen video. So what does this guy say? Okay, now go into CAD and try creating a new LandFX project yourself. Then come back here and click verify. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can close this and go do the task and then reopen the trainer, but it's going to take you to the landing page. So you have to click on irrigation again, and then get back here and scroll through the video. So what I recommend actually is if this is in the way, to kind of move this over or just kind of get it out of the way. Because you can work in CAD while this web dialog is open, which is pretty cool. So it wants me to go create a new project. So according to the video, I need to click on project list and create a new project. Call it whatever I'd like. Set my preference set, click OK. And click on the irrigation button. Now that part wasn't part of the task, but it was in the video, and I'm just trying to follow the video. So now that I've done that, let's click verify and see if I did it correctly. Voila, great. You created a new project. You're off to a good start. Super cool. Got verification that I did it correctly. Already on my way to success in LandFX. Now, let's show what happens if you don't do the lesson correctly. So let's say I watched the video on placing drip. And I got to the end, and it tells me to add some drip equipment to the irrigation manager. But because I skipped the video, I'm just going to add new equipment to the irrigation equipment. Okay, so I added some irrigation equipment. Was that right? No, look at how disappointed he is. We don't see any drip equipment in your drawing. Try placing some from the irrigation manager. So I know I didn't do that right, so maybe I want to replay the video and actually watch it and
Drip line hatch will
see what Jake has to say in the video, follow along, and then do the task. And if I do that, I should get a verification that I did it correctly. All right, so I think that pretty much covers it for the trainer in CAD. Oh, let's go back to this side. And I'll show you how you can access the trainer from outside of CAD if you need. So here's our current web page. Once again, tomorrow, this will change. It'll look slightly different. The videos will all be in a videos tab and everything else will be in the support tab. But let's go to support and look for trainer. So top result is the LandFX trainer. And this tells you how you can access the trainer. And if I want to watch the videos, there's a link right here, which will open up a new web browsing window and basically take me to the exact same interface as before. The only difference being that the verify task at the end doesn't actually do anything. So there's that. go back to our home page. And let's look for a documentation page. Let's say I want to learn about, project templates. I know how to set up a project, but every time I set up a new project, I have to add in all of my plants and my irrigation equipment, my details new, and it's kind of time consuming. So there's got to be some way to streamline that process. So let's go back to our support page. And maybe I already know the words I'm looking for. So project template. Maybe I'll just type that in. And here's what the results look like. And you're going to get quite a few results with almost any search, but usually the top one is the hit that I want. So I can now read about project templates. And so the page is pretty thorough. It has a section on why use templates. Every documentation page starts with a nice description of what's going on, maybe an overview of what's on the page. These yellow and blue boxes are different colored because they should draw your eye into it. And so it's important to read those as well. And there's a bunch of writing on the subject that's not specifically teaching you how to use the tools, which is something that I appreciate versus, say, Autodesk documentation, where it's kind of a page with just how to use the tool, like what the command is and what button to press. But I find it hard to get a fuller understanding of what's going on. So we put time into describing it, explaining why to use whatever it is, just so you get a much more solid foundation behind the actual tool. And yeah, eventually you get down to the part where it's teaches you how to create a template. And so you can run through these steps. Everything's laid out nicely with images, so it should be easy to follow. And then anytime there's a related video or a power tip video, that'll show up here on the right. So you can click on that, watch the video if you want. And once you get closer to the bottom, we'll have supplemental information like related webinars. So if you want to watch an entire webinar about templates, go ahead and click on the All About Templates webinar. And then troubleshooting at the bottom. So if there are issues that we've seen concerning, in this case, project templates, we might have some links to knowledge base articles to troubleshoot those issues. Or if it's just an issue that doesn't warrant an entire page, you might see an issue and a solution laid out like that at the bottom. So that's documentation. If I didn't know what project templates were, I just knew I wanted to streamline the project process or the setup process. But the word template was not something that I was thinking of. You could also browse to that page. So starting with the documentation page here, I can click on an area or a broad category. In this case, it'd be admin. It even says project and sheet setup down here. So maybe I'd click on that, go to the admin documentation, which has everything, all the documentation pages about the admin side of Land Effects. On the left here, I have different sections. So I'm not looking for customization or preferences, but I am looking for project setup. So maybe I'll click that and it'll scroll me down to that section. And then I can browse through the articles here to see which one pertains to what I'm looking for. And so if I do that, I can come across the project templates link. If I read that description, kind of lines up perfectly with what I'm looking for. So I'll click that, and that takes me to the page without having to search for it. And let's say I come across an issue, not with project templates, but just an issue, let's say, with irrigation. What's a common one? Uh, Zero flow. Maybe I'm having an issue with zero flow. So I can browse through the knowledge base, just like you do with documentation for irrigation. Here's the top articles. Oh, it's in there. Or I can go to the all page, which is a lot like the documentation page. And I'm going to narrow it down to drip equipment. And oh, there it is. Drip area showing zero flow. So that's what I was looking for. So I'll click on that and get to the page. Alternatively, if I have an issue, I can simply type in zero flow. And I can narrow it down. If it doesn't come up right away, I can type in irrigation or drip area or something. So, you're looking for the tool or at least the irrigation side of it. Zero flow pretty much pertains to irrigation only, so it's going to come up right away. But try to narrow it down if your results aren't popping up right away. So those are ways to get to this page. And then I can read through the issue. I can read about the cause. I can even watch a video that pertains to the subject matter of the page, and then go to the solution. And it's important when you're going through solutions that if the step one or the first couple of steps don't solve the solution, keep going until the very end of the article. We see it kind of a lot where a user might do step one and then say that it doesn't work when there's several other steps. So make sure to go through all of the steps in the solution. More likely than not, the fix is there. Because every time we get issues into tech support um, and it's not already documented, we will send that over to Jason and he will write out steps to solving the issue. And that's pretty much it. Um, One thing I did want to throw in at the end here is while we are working on some CAD basics to add to the trainer to basically learn how to use AutoCAD, at least what you need to learn for using with LandFX. Those aren't in the works yet, but AutoCAD is a very, very popular program and there are people using it all over the world. And so because of that, there's a lot of content for learning how to use AutoCAD. So if you need help with, I don't know, scaling an image, well, we have content for that. But if you don't find it on our website, there are a lot of AutoCAD tutorials on YouTube. Anytime that I come across AutoCAD issues, and I've been using it for almost 20 years, and I still constantly find new things about AutoCAD that I didn't know about. It's one of those types of programs. Uh, I just open up a Google page, a search page, and I'll type AutoCAD and then whatever the issue is. Usually it's a weird setting or system variable that I've never heard of, but yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on AutoCAD forums. Users are pretty proactive about providing solutions there. And so because so many people use it, if you're having an issue in the program, more than likely someone else has had the same issue. And so you can look up AutoCAD specific issues in Google. And then of course there are classes. The community college that I went to before university is where I first learned AutoCAD. And so there's also that option. There's online courses, but I guess suffice to say, there's a ton of information on learning AutoCAD out there. You just got to look for it. And with that, we have plenty of time for questions if there are any.
We've definitely got some great questions. We just had one about the keyboard shortcuts for land effects commands. And I grabbed that link off the old website. That's a very good one. It's true. It's a good congratulations to that was a Brandy who suggested that. You have won our heart. So he's a true power user. Is going, I could be a little bit faster if I memorize some of these keyboard commands.
Yeah, lots of keyboard commands. One tip that I will tell any CAD user is to always look at the command line when you're doing anything. So I'm just setting up a tree here so that I can place it in model space. And so when I click place, notice down at the bottom, it says position because that's what I'm doing is I'm positioning the plant. But there's also a keyboard commands piece of text there. And the blue K means that I can press the K key, the blue indicating the key to press to open up whatever it is. And so here are the hidden keyboard commands for placing plants. This is just a cheat sheet, so don't try clicking on these buttons. But it tells me that shotgun mode is the number keys 1 through 0, 0 for 10, meaning that I can place 1 through 10 plants at once. I can move between species of plants in my trees category here, turn on paint mode, copy along polyline, label, etc. So if I want to copy along line, I see that V is the key for that. So I can place a plant and hit the V key. And there you go. So usually, more times than not, the command line will have some sort of indication of extra options or tools that are at your disposal while you're doing something in Land Effects or AutoCAD as well. And then, of course, as Jer said, if you have questions on anything like that, like keyboard commands, we do have a documentation page on that.
Absolutely. And then, we had a couple of people chime in that sometimes the music can be a little distracting in our power tip videos. And duly noted, something we always check. I always approve every video, and often I'll mention, oh, some of the levels need to be adjusted. So duly noted, and we're actually already looking into seeing there might be a way to separate the music to be a separate track, separate audio track, to be able to just simply mute it or control the volume of the music on your own. So thank you for that suggestion. We will see what we can do with that.
Yeah. So here's something that I showed in the slideshow that I didn't show live. When you hover over any of our tools in the ribbon, you'll get this little flyout that'll describe what it does. So this is the plant group label. Basically, you call out several plants of the same variety with one label, so it tells you what it does. The image down below kind of shows the process. So the first step is to click a plant. So that's why the 1 is next to the pick box over the plant. 2 is to draw a window. And 3 is to end it. And that'll create the plant, the group plant label. But I can also press F1 and it'll open up the documentation page on labeling plants, which will have pretty much all the information that you need for using that tool. And then also you have your help button, which is another way to get to the documentation from CAD. So pretty much not all of our dialog boxes, but I think most of them we'll have some help button that'll take you directly to the documentation page for that box.
And Christopher chimed in with a really good question about our webinar process. Who's specifically mentioning the sheet set manager webinar as an example, because there were, and I recall that webinar, there was a few things we mentioned about, some possible future enhancements and changes and different things. Kind of a follow-up webinar was sort of mentioned in that. And he just asks, how often do we review and revise webinars? And well, really, it's kind of hard to just answer that question without telling the story of the whole of how we just manage all the webinars. We do have monthly video production meetings. There is an annual video production calendar that we put together every December. Then at those monthly meetings, we meet and we go over the upcoming Power Tip Trainer and webinar and iPad videos that are scheduled over the next 1 to 2 months. And all those people who have those videos assigned and talk about what topics they were thinking, and we all go over that. And so during those meetings, we might mention things such as exactly that. Hey, someone mentioned at this last webinar that we should redo the sheet set webinar, so that can come up. Also, we just will generally kind of look at our oldest webinars and just see if any of those need to be reshot. Other times it can be during just simply any tech support issue. If any of you have received tech support, you know very well that we will always try to respond with a power tip or a webinar link. And when we do that, often the technician will look at it and might go, "Oh wow, that's a 4-year-old video." That's probably, and then they'll make a note to bring that up at the next video production meeting. And so the short answer, I suppose, is we absolutely do rely on users like you to mention that to us, because obviously thousands of users with tens of thousands of eyeballs is a lot more efficient, and they're the ones watching all these videos, and you see a webinar that is 4 or 5 years old, that maybe you feel, this could probably be redone. Yeah, go ahead and drop us a line just like Christopher did, and that will absolutely kind of get into our process, and we'll end up getting freshened. So it is a giant process to produce the volume of high quality videos that we do. So thank you for that question, Christopher. And then we did get another question too, just regarding trainers, and but there's lots of good questions. The CAD trainer, as Paul mentioned, we are working on this year, and we do hope to be releasing that CAD trainer by the end of the year. Going to next year, we hope to be producing the site trainer. So the trainer continues to be a very big effort here, with the very recent redesign of it, enabled us to really expand the categories and the numbers of videos. And so we have incorporated that into our video production calendar. And so now each of our video content creators are responsible with creating a trainer video each week. And so that, so give us this year. This is a new thing we're doing this year. And so you'll see a lot of new trainer video content, as we get through this year, as we get those added. But we also had someone chime in and ask about that kind of community college face-to-face sort of training. Specifically, they're wondering about something in the Minnesota area. But for Land Effects specific content, you would have to kind of ask around about uh, in terms of universities and schools, the list that we maintain a top 25 list of universities. There's a whole sidebar on how we come up with who is the top 25. But then we have the second 25 and then a third list. And it just simply helps our university team focus. The top 25 universities, we try to make sure they all get a webinar every year. And then the second tier 25, we just try to make sure we stay in contact with them. There are about 180 colleges in the United States that offer landscape architecture or landscape design or some sort of related degree. That is a tremendous number, and some of those have programs that literally number in less than a dozen of students. And so, in terms of our efforts, it's very difficult getting through to professors and, saying, hi, we're from a software company. We'd like you to show the software to the students. Understandable that a professor would be like, go away, corporate person, you software people are all the same, right? So it's very challenging to get through to professors, and it's a extensive effort. So that's why we specifically organize them that way. But that being said, whatever university is closest to you um, might not be in that top 25 where we know that they actually use Land Effects in content. We're in touch with them. We provide them with webinars. We reach out to them several times a year. Anything underneath that top 25, they still have access to the software. We still monitor it, but who knows? It could be 3 students downloaded it, and of course, maybe they just clicked around a little and didn't actually do anything. So it's very challenging. So long story short, go ahead and give them a call. Your alma mater, would love to hear from you. 100% they would love to hear from you. Every time I've ever talked to a professor, they absolutely love hearing from their former students about what they're doing, what software they're using, what they're doing with their practice. It helps them be a better professor. So please do. And then if you're, of course, in a different city, reach out to your local university, and say, hey, I can't really reach out to my alma mater. You're here in my local town. Let them know what you're after. There may be a continuing education program for adults. You never know. And so we don't necessarily know the absolute details of every single swinging university. So it's absolutely, again, it's one of the things you're absolutely empowered to do and find out. And we got another good question of best method for giving us suggestions. And I would offer anyway, I would just say, just please not over Facebook. But uh, an email is probably our favorite. Email support@landeffects.com. That is absolutely our preferred. Or if you want to be a little even nicer to us, go ahead and go to the portal and put it into a ticket. That would be, because that's the first thing we're going to do is we take each email and we have to create that ticket. So if you go ahead and create the ticket for us, that'd be great. Um, as for the suggestions, just reminder, so much of this software has been from suggestions. I mean, obviously, all the original construction of it came from my father in his office, and so it always was, coming from actual users giving us these ideas. It was, we never did a marketing study. I certainly have had ideas of my own, and I go, oh, this would be neat, but I at least love to run them by a user. So your ideas are very much welcome, and they are absolutely implemented. It's one of my favorite things to do is to implement a user's idea the same week that they suggest it. It's just a fun little thing. I love doing that. Sorry to just kind of flex it a little, okay? But it's really fun being that nimble that we can implement a feature and get it documented and release it all in one week. And so please give us your suggestions, especially your suggestions for future webinars and power tip videos. We really do rely on that, because otherwise it's just us sitting around with those monthly meetings going, what would be a good webinar? So hearing it from you guys always really helps us. So, what do you think, Paul? I think that's probably pretty good for today. I want to wish everyone a absolutely fantastic weekend. It's a 3-day weekend, So I hope you have something fun planned. Have a wonderful time. Keep the ideas coming, keep the learning going, and we will see you next time.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.